After a game in total darkness, might the sun have risen on the 49ers pass rush? They certainly hope so, but this trade for Keion White with the New England Patriots is probably not the only thing the 49ers need to do. And I think that they will still be in the market for McDonald IV, and if the New York Giants would allow it, Kayvon Thibodeaux. So maybe when the 49ers travel from this great city across country to another great city, well, New Jersey, it counts, it's close enough to New York. That's up for your debate. Maybe, just maybe, they can return with a pure edge rusher like a McDonald, a former teammate of Brock Purdy's. We shall see. But right now the 49ers have Keion White aboard, and Keion White is a very talented player. 285 pounds, but he runs faster than other 285 pounders. So he's not quite as heavy as a nose tackle. That makes him an edge rusher by trade, but he can move into that interior and use his length, uses athleticism, and uses strength against those offensive guards. And that's exactly what Charles Omenihu did for the 49ers to a lot of success. Now, there are a couple differences between White and Omenihu. One is that White bench pressed 30 reps, and Charles Omenihu bench pressed only 15 reps at his NFL Combine. So White has got shorter arms, 34 inches versus 36 for Omenihu, but similar results in that he is able to bull rush offensive tackles and offensive guards and push them back into the lap of the quarterback. Charles Omenihu converted his length into power. You're going to see a little more compact power from somebody like Keion White. Now, are there drawbacks here? Well, from an economic standpoint, not really. It was a 6-7 pick swap. We've learned a little bit more this morning about the conditions of this pick. The 7 going back to the 49ers is only going to go back to the 49ers if Keion White plays or is active for at least 7 games for San Francisco. By the way, that's a aquatic park. I'm about to go down there and swim. Ghirardelli Square right in front of me. When I swim from Alcatraz, well, it doesn't look that hard from here, does it? Not that bad. Golden Gate, it's a perfect day here in San Francisco. So anyway, that 6-7 pick swap is only happening if White is active. So obviously the Patriots have a little bit of insurance in this trade. If he's not active for 7 games, then it's exactly the Charles Omenihu price. 6th round pick from the 49ers going over to New England no matter what. When you look at the construction of this defensive line, you know, it was special over the first 2 games when they had Nick Bosa and Bryce Huff both available. I think it's very important to remember the Robert Saleh quote about Bryce Huff, talking about Mariano Rivera closing games. The 49ers, Mariano Rivera, 2 games to open this season, 2 out of 2, when they had both Nick Bosa and Bryce Huff available for the start of a game. They forced fumbles on sacks to end both of those games. Once with Bosa against the Seahawks, once with Huff against the New Orleans Saints. And you know, I'll tell you that it's safe to say that defensive line, back when the 49ers had their guys, had the markings of a special unit. Unfortunately for the 49ers, both Bosa and Huff are out now, but Huff is going to be back. And what's been really promising so far is that Huff has really started to assume some of the Bosa 3-down role. We thought that he might just be a closing pass rushing specialist, but it looks like he's capable of more than that. And that gives the 49ers a little bit more leeway as they build this defensive line moving forward. Now, Keion White, that's somebody that you pair with Yetur Gross-Matos, who's been on a pitch count, but is also an outside-in type of player. So you're just trying to build as many adaptable rushers as possible. The reason that I think the 49ers need another addition here is Huff has moved into the Bosa role. Obviously not going to be as good as Bosa, but he's moved into that role and he's done a very, very competent job at it. He's going to be back. Who's going to play that pure pass rushing Bryce Huff role? The closer, the Mariano Rivera that Robert Saleh talked about. That's why I think there still is one more hole here. You know, Robert Beal Jr. still doesn't have a career sack. That's somebody who has the physical measurements to potentially play that role, but he, you know, that was a flyer the 49ers took in the 5th round on the Georgia defensive end who had yet to play that position or produce that way in college. It was just somebody who they saw as a traits-based guy who could fit in. But where do you know, how do you find a player that can actually produce for you there. That's what I think is going to be the key to fully unlocking this pass rush. You needed bodies. They needed to stop the bleeding. They needed to make sure that the sun rose, and the sun has indeed risen now with Keion White and Clelin Ferrell, who I think Clelin Ferrell's going to be an upgrade over Travis Gibson for the 49ers. That's just going to be a practice squad elevation. Those are the bodies. That stops the bleeding. Now you go for the jugular for the trade. Now you go for the bigger move, and the question is, how much are the 49ers willing to pay? How much would Will McDonald cost? I mean, somebody double-digit sacks last year, 241 pounds, pure speed edge rusher for the 49ers. Is this somebody for the Jets? I spoke a little bit too soon. Is this somebody that the 49ers could get for a third-round pick? Dee Ford cost a second-round pick in 2019. I think that parting ways with a first-round pick is out of the question for the 49ers. But then you ask, is there a player-for-player possibility here? Somebody like Jawan Jennings on the table. We've talked about so many of these names. Bradley Chubb with the Dolphins, Jalen Phillips with the Dolphins. Those are slightly bigger guys that they could be three-down players. Will McDonald at 241 is more of the pure pass-rushing type. One of the cool things is that he was college teammates with Brock Purdy at Iowa State. So when I went out to Iowa State, which everything looked a whole lot different than it does here, but when I went out there, then they talked a lot about Will McDonald, and they were saying he's going to have a breakout season. This was ahead of 2024, and Matt Campbell and the staff there, they were right. He broke out for the Jets, and he played under Robert Saleh. So Saleh knows all about the potential that Will McDonald has. And then, of course, the Giants don't want to trade Kayvon Thibodeau, but things can change, and we can approach this as a preview of 49ers Giants on Sunday. It's not going to be a good New York Giants defense, but you could watch Kayvon Thibodeau and you can cheer for the misfortune of the New York teams, because if that happens, well, first off, New York doesn't have this. But if that happens, they won't have their pass rushers either, potentially, if they want to trade some away to the 49ers. So, one of those things where finally the sun has risen, 49ers on the pass rushing upswing, if you will. It was ugly against the Texans, and they've had to be creative with their moves because they're working within the context of this 3-year window. But somebody like Keion White, I watched the bull rushing ability. I watch just some of the hand rip ability. He's a strong guy with juice. He's a strong pass rusher with real juice to get after the quarterback, and that is more than the 49ers had on Sunday. Now, can he consistently harness that? That's the question. I think there were some frustrations in New England with his inability to consistently harness it under the parameters of the scheme that they were playing, right? They were doing a lot of stuff with him standing up on the outside. The 3-4 stuff just didn't work for Keion White. This is a hand-in-the-dirt 4-3 defensive end who could kick inside and rush against the tackles. And, in the wide 9 under Chris Kasarik, he is going to have a lot of room. It's not like he's going to have to be playing as a fire hydrant in the middle when he's aligned at tackle. There's going to be a lot of space for him to showcase that length and showcase that athleticism. So I think that a system like the 49ers fits him just like Charles Omenihu fit into the 49ers system. And the one tying variable to all of this is Chris Kasarik. We could talk about one team's trash as another team's treasure. For Charles Omenihu and many other players, that's been true because Chris Kasarik has known how to unleash these players in the wide 9. I look at Keion White's tape and I see enough reps to where I'm like, okay, I see how this could fit with Chris Kasarik. And then it's up to the player, and it's up to the system, and it's up to circumstances to make sure that that's unleashed on a longer scale. But the guy had 5 sacks. 5 sacks and a good pressure rating. His best pressure rating came from the inside back in 2024. Then they changed coaching staffs. Who knows the details of what happened, but it obviously didn't work out with Mike Vrabel and company. But again, one team's trash can be another team's treasure. And this was a trade that every team should make. Like, the 49ers have taken these kind of flyer-like trades on guys with a lot of upside, and it's paid off for them in a big way. And I keep on circling back to Omenihu. Why not for a 6-7 pick swap? And then if you've got to send this 7th-round pick back to New England because White has been active for 7 games, well, it's probably a successful trade. A pass rusher for the back half of the season when you're 5-3, when you're still contending for the cost of a 6th-round pick. What, $772,000 charged to the 49ers cap this year. He's still under contract for next year. You could work with him just like Amenahu. Yeah, no brainer. But what is next? Will the sun continue shining on the 49ers trade prospects? Will McDonald, Kayvon Thibodeau, Bradley Chubb. I mean, I think McDonald, out of those guys, if the Jets are willing to part with him during their miserable season at 1-7, that might make the most sense. Reunite him with Robert Saleh. All right, off to practice, off to meet Keion White. And speaking of pass rushers and business, well, the contracts keep growing. Aiden Hutchinson, $45 million per year, second only to Micah Parsons, who's at $46.5 million per year. So for Aiden, I think he's got the most guarantees ever. $145 million, re-signs with the Detroit Lions. I'm now on my way downhill. Promised you guys that it's going to the water. Well, this is what it looks like from the new park, Francisco Park. Nice place for a walk. Anyway, the cost of doing business at pass rusher is obviously immense unless you can sneak your way into some of these bargain deals. And obviously the 49ers have done so in the past, and we'll see what they can do here moving forward. The trade deadline now less than a week away. It's going to be a very, very fun few days to track what everybody's doing, what the 49ers will try to do. We know for a while now that they've been on the active market for pass rushers, and obviously Keion White, acquiring him from New England, does not take them out of it. One of the big questions I've gotten is, will Keion White suit up right away for the 49ers? And I don't see why not. Pass rushers as plug and play as it gets. Now, obviously, Chris Kasarik adds more complexity to it. Maybe they won't be able to do exactly everything they want with Keion White to begin. I remember with Charles Amenahu, that was the case for San Francisco. Took a little bit for the 49ers to figure that thing out in full, but Keion White's going to have some time to figure things out. Let's take a look at the cable car. This is a good finish. This is the 49ers pass rush rising to new heights. That's what they have to do with this trade deadline. All right, I think that's a good finish. We'll talk to you guys very soon.